Welcome to Get to the Good Part. I am Ryan.
I'm John.
And this is Chris.
On Get to the Good Part this week, we have Chapter 8, but we also have a special announcement, which we promised to you a little while ago on Twitter and on the Facebook and on every social media platform. On July 28th, we will be doing our first ever live episode, and we'll be broadcasting live from Suttrie's High Gravity Tavern in downtown Knoxville, located at 409 South Gay Street. For those of you who happen to be sort of near that area, it's definitely going to be worth coming out. We're going to be doing something a little bit different. It's not just going to be a live episode of Get to the Good Part. Chris, you want to kind of describe what we will be doing?
We are going to be reenacting Chapter 8. The Cursed Chapter. Sort of. Well, we're gonna be doing a live casting of our playing D&D, playing the Tomb of Horrors module while drinking and in front of cameras for everyone to see. With some slight variations, because we're not doing an exact replication, but we are going to be playing out the characters. So everybody who's going to be playing at the table will have one of the characters from the book. It'll be statted out based on that character with some minor modifications. And in order to make it a little bit interesting, since the Tomb of Horrors is a very trap-laden adventure, we're going to be replacing the challenges of those traps with pop culture 80s and 90s trivia. And depending on how we answer it, or if we just don't know, and depending on how we roll, will determine how we get through those traps and eventually make our way to Acererak.
It's going to be interesting because it's going to be a different take on Tomb of Horrors. First of all, we're going to be doing it in front of a live audience, so we want it to be interesting for them. We want it to be interesting for you guys out there listening. Listening to a D&D module for some of you is probably very interesting. For others, it would be kind of boring. We're going to be doing it in kind of a fun way. Basically, we're going to be, as Chris said, replacing those traps with not just trivia, but interesting mechanics that revolve around the 80s and the 90s. Popular culture from that time. It's going to be a lot of fun. Before the event comes up, I'm going to be putting out player cards to let you know what the different abilities and the measurements on the characters and how they'll interact with the Tomb of Horrors, some of their limitations, some of their capabilities. We've been working on this for a little while. We're really excited about it. It's going to be a lot of fun. We hope you can join us live. If you're one of the people that can show up live, great. We're going to hang around at Suttrie's, which is a barcade, actually. I almost didn't mention that. Suttrie's is actually a barcade in downtown Knoxville. They do have a joust machine. They have every pinball game almost that matters. A bunch of stand-ups, a bunch of sit-down arcades, and a bunch of really good beer, and a bunch of really good people. We're really excited to do it there, and we really appreciate them letting us have the event there. Show up. It's going to be a lot of fun. If you can't show up, if you're outside of, if it's beyond your capability to be in Knoxville, good news. We're also going to be live streaming this on YouTube and possibly a few other places. We'll be live streaming it on Twitch as well. So there will be a chat forum where you can go in, you can interact with us. How you interact with us, we're going to keep a little bit of a secret until the game comes out.
We don't want to give that a part away. We're going to tease that shit a little bit.
No. But you can mention the best part about this whole thing.
The best part about this whole thing is that it's for charity. All the proceeds from this event are going to go to the Extra Life Foundation, and their money goes towards children memorial hospitals throughout the United States. It's a really great cause, one that I've believed in for a long time. As John laments constantly, I played Destiny. The Destiny community has raised a shitload of money for Extra Life charities in the past. That's kind of how I copped onto them. I really am a big fan of the work that they do. Just go to YouTube and look up Extra Life Foundation and look at some of the work that they've done. And within a couple minutes, you'll understand how great this charity actually is. You'll be able to donate through a link that we'll put up in the Twitch feed. We'll also post that link to our other social media. So even if you can't interact with us during the live stream, you can still hop on and donate, and we definitely encourage that you do. We'll also have we're still kind of working it out, but we're gonna have a method for if you join us live, you'll be able to donate in the live venue as well. So that's Extra Life Foundation. In the show notes, we'll go ahead and put out a link to them if you want to know more about who they are and what they do. But at the end of the day, let's have a fucking blast playing a Ready Player One version of Tomb of Horrors, hanging out, have a few beers, have a few laughs, and raise some money for charity. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah. And you know, one of the fun parts here is that you guys haven't played D&D before.
Never.
No.
I've always wanted to.
So this is going to be
as well.
A new experience for you guys. We may do a little bit of practice in advance just to get the feel for it, but this will be your first module.
Right.
This will be my first module. So again, just one last time before we press on with Chapter 8. That's 409 South Gay Street in Knoxville, Tennessee. Suttrie's High Gravity Tavern. We're going to be doing a live version of Tomb of Horrors, and the characters will be centered around 4 characters in Ready Player One. Who those characters are, we'll reveal in the coming weeks. Yeah, we're really excited about it. I'm fucking thrilled to do it. I think it's going to be a blast. For those of you who've wanted to hear Get to the Good Part unedited, you're definitely going to hear us unedited, and I promise you we will not disappoint. We will be fucking morons.
Yes, and we will offend some.
We're going to say things we're going to regret.
Yeah.
The next morning.
Yeah. The event goes from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. If you come to the live event, we'll be sticking around for a little while afterwards to hang out with you guys, have a few beers. Hell, if you show up to the live event, I'll buy you a beer. It'll be a good time. We can sit there. We can talk Ready Player One. We can play some Joust. We can have a good time. It'll be a lot of fun. All right, so that is our live episode. We hope you can join us. This is Chapter 8 of Ready Player One, a chapter that begins with Wade Watts entering the Tomb of Horrors. Now, being somebody who's never played Dungeons & Dragons before, myself, and I include John here. I can't speak for John, but I will.
Go ahead.
It paints a pretty awesome picture of what you can expect in Tomb of Horrors. Now, as I understand it, Chris, you can shine a little light on this. Tomb of Horrors is a little bit different as far as modules go. Is that right?
A little bit, yeah. A lot of traps, and there are some monsters, but for the most part, it's a lot of traps, a lot of rooms, and we're going to have to go through it. The advantage for us, of course, is that we'll have the maps, much like Parsifal does. But yeah, it's really, really nifty, really detailed, and also apparently really difficult. Because when we talked to our dungeon master, we were like, "Yeah, man, we want to go through, but our characters are probably like level 2 or 3." He was like, "There's no fucking way." So right off the bat, we're like, "We're gonna die. We're gonna die."
Well, he was like, "You won't make it.
You won't make it past the
Tomb
first
of Horrors.
room.
You won't even enter the fucking Tomb of Horrors."
So it's gonna be a really short game.
Yeah. Well, no. Here's the thing: we've figured out ways around that. How we're gonna play that and everything like that. I'm gonna push out kind of slowly leading up to the event.
Okay.
Just to kind of tease it for you guys.
Such tease.
We've got some really kick-ass ideas for how to make this interesting and to not end the game within 3 seconds. More details on that later. But again, let's get back to Chapter 8. Chris, let me ask you this.
Sure.
As a seasoned, if you can call yourself seasoned, Dungeons & Dragons player, what's your favorite module of all time?
You know what? I've played some modules. In fact, I played one last year where we were we weren't gnomes. We were God, I don't even
Dwarves?
fucking know what we were. No, it wasn't dwarves. They were like ugly fucking creatures.
Goblins.
Goblins, yes. We played goblins.
Okay.
So they give you the sheets of the different goblin personalities, and you kind of read up on it, and you get into character.
What is a goblin personality, Chris? Can you break that down?
Imagine Gollum, only he has a bunch of Gollum buddies, and they're all dressed, and they're all idiots, but they all think they're really smart. Those are goblins. But, some of my favorite modules are the ones that the Dungeon Masters spend weeks creating. Mm-hmm. Because you're kind of going through a world that they're imagining, and they're setting up this quasi-linear path for you to explore, and you're just kind of exploring their realm of imagination. So my favorites are the ones that aren't actually pre-written modules, are the ones that the Dungeon Masters took time to create.
So you're talking just, they write the module out?
Mm-hmm.
Do they base it on another module, or do they just come up with it off the top of their head?
You know what? The textbooks and the details are so in-depth that, they can write it up on their own. Like, they'll create a map, and they'll figure out the storyline and how you come across this mission. You go into the bar, and, you find that guy off in the corner who looks shady, and you go and buy something from him, and he says, before I can give this to you, you got to go do this thing. So it's very RPG-ish. You meet an NPC, or you bump into something, and all of a sudden before you've got this mission, and how you deal with it is up to you. But one clue, an event, leads you to the next. And again, it's very free form, but it's sort of a choose your own adventure, but you're helping to write the content as you move through the base story.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my question is, scale of 1 to 10, what's the difficulty of Tomb of Horrors compared to most modules?
It's probably an 8. I think a lot of people remember it as being one of the most difficult because it's probably one of the first ones they played, and they probably played it with characters that were lower level anyhow. Yeah. But just as a reminiscent kind of thing, I think that's like when people who were Star Wars hit them at the right age, they go, it was the best movie ever. And, I'll watch it now and I'll look back and go, it was okay.
It's more than okay.
See what I mean?
See, I've seen stuff where people have said, I don't know how much water this carries, but I've seen a few things online when I was looking up Tomb of Horrors that said, if you take a cleric or a mage, they can cast a spell where they can a spell of location, and then dig through the top of where the treasure room is in the Tomb of Horrors, and just shortcut it that way. Which I don't know why the fuck you would do that. I mean, obviously, as far as I understand D&D, your character's progress carries to the next module, right?
Yeah. You're supposed to keep your character alive, so you want to move through. Yeah, it does.
So if you dump through the ceiling of this thing and you shortcut it by several hours, you stand to gain a lot from that tactic without losing anything.
That's true.
It kind of robs the spirit of the game.
Yeah. Well, you could do that, right? Because it's a mound, and you could dig through the top if you had this location. But, the DM has some control over this. Like you could roll, but what you don't know is the number you have to roll over necessarily. And he could make it incredibly hard. He could make it so that you can't use your skill on this thing. It might seem like you can, but you can't. And, you might end up in a false location, or you might end up digging into one of the many rooms that have traps. And it might be, Acererak made it so that room looked like the room you wanted to go into because he's a freaking powerful demi-lich. So there are ways to get around that sort of storytelling if a player character gets clever and force them to kind of go through the front way. It'd be a crappy DM that didn't catch you on that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're saying that they would sort of create a situation where you could possibly on a low roll be penalized for doing something like that.
Or you could make it so that no matter how high the roll is, you couldn't get past it. Short of a near impossible roll, like maybe you'd have to roll a 21. Or a 20, sorry, not a 21, but a 20 on a 20-sided dice. Or you'd have to have, or even more than that necessarily. Like you'd have to have some advantages built in to boost that roll. But even so, even if you were successful, a dungeon master could be like, all right, start digging. Because as the DM, you're playing God. So if somebody wants to fuck with your story, you can kind of fuck back.
Don't you also gain experience making your way through anyway?
You do.
So, I mean, you'd be sacrificing any possible experience gain by shortcutting through the entire module, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's true. And you get a lot of experience by completing it as well. So I don't know if necessarily the experience per se is on the way. Like most of the games I play, it's not like you get a bunch of gold and boom, you get a bunch of experience. Unlike it is here in the book.
Yeah.
It's you get to the end, and then usually the dungeon master will go through and say, and this whole thing was worth this experience.
So you don't get your experience points till the end?
A lot of the times I've played, yeah, that's how it worked out.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I'm not going to level up in the middle of a game, if that makes any sense.
See, and that's where it differs from RPGs that you play in video games and things like that.
Right. Yeah. The minute you get that experience, you level up and you can use the weapon you couldn't use 5 minutes ago.
Right.
Or you level up and you can pick a different, benefit or perk from that leveling up that'll help you in that specific scenario.
And I think that the idea here is that in between games, your character is learning whatever it is you're leveling up to. So you wouldn't instantly in a snap be able to start casting fireballs. You get your experience at the end, and between games, we assume the story goes that your character learned how to throw fireballs. And then the next time you go in, you can do it.
Okay.
So, back to Chapter 8. Really, this is a chapter that happens in two parts. The difficulty we've had in talking about the chapter is that there are two parts that are very descriptive about, I won't say mundane things, because in the story it's very riveting, but to talk about it on a podcast would be a little bit mundane. Wouldn't you agree?
It's a bit like eating great pizza and then trying to describe how great it is by using the word great.
Yeah. It's a riveting chapter. It's a major turning point in the book. I mean, basically here's where we're at. Wade walks into the Tomb of Horrors knowing that this is where he's going to find the copper key, right? I mean, I think we can all agree on that.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, because he's found the Tomb of Horrors, because he's gotten to this point, he knows that he's on the right track. Or so he thinks. He's the first person to find the place where the copper key could be. Now, here's the thing. And this is something that he kind of talks about is he's making his way through the Tomb of Horrors. He's got a bit of a back and forth with himself on this. And this is a point that I think is really important in this chapter. He brings up what happens if your character dies in the Oasis. Right? Because he's anticipating that there could be, so even though he's got the module in front of him, he knows where the traps are, he knows how to avoid them, he knows his way through the Tomb of Horrors. Even still, Halliday is sort of unpredictable, and something could come up in 86 his character, and what happens?
John?
You lose all of your experience, and you start over from a spawn point.
Yep. That is my take at least.
Level 3 down to level 0 or 1, wherever you start.
The first time that I read it, I kind of read it like, does he go back to Incipio because that's a spawn point for all characters, or does he go back to the instance that he's in? I won't bring up Destiny. I've got a perfect example from Destiny.
No, yeah, I thought of the same thing.
Yeah. So in Destiny, what you do is like if you load into a mission, you drop into what's called a patrol zone, and a patrol zone can be filled with a certain number of random characters who happen to be on the server that you load into, right? So you'll see them around doing patrol missions and things like that. But when you go into the checkpoint to get into the mission that you're there for, it's called a darkness zone. And basically everything kind of drops out. And if there's a character you're not in a party with right next to you, that character will disappear because you're now in the instance of that mission. If that makes any sense. So it goes from multiplayer to single player all at once. That's kind of interesting in context here. Now, if you die, you don't get sent back up to the tower, which is basically Incipio in Destiny. You get shipped back to that checkpoint where you loaded in at, or the next checkpoint that you reach. Now, there is a game type in Destiny called a Nightfall mission. And this is a mission that resets weekly. And what happens is, it used to happen this way. I don't know if it's changed. It's been a while since I've played Destiny, but basically what would happen is you'd go through, if you were with a party or if you were by yourself, you would make your way through the Nightfall mission, and no matter where you died, you would be sent back up into orbit, or you'd be kicked out of the server entirely. So you'd have to start over from the very beginning, no matter what checkpoint you reached in that mission. I guess that's pretty similar to what happens here, where if you want to put it in a video game context, if Wade reaches a certain point in the tomb, and he collects things along the way, anything that he collects... Now, in Destiny, if you collect things along the way, I believe that you keep them if you get kicked back to the very beginning. But you start over. So, like, if you gain experience points, you keep them, but you get kicked back to the beginning.
And imagine how shitty a game when they know that you're not only targeting a particular audience with expectations, but you're also targeting like a period of time that people have. You need a game that it's consumable maybe for hours or for 15 minutes. And you have to make it so that you're willing to press forward through the risk. So the risk has to be low. And you can't just invest a shitload of time only to have all your crap dumped when you get killed. Otherwise, you'd play it safe. You'd never make it through the game. It wouldn't be fun. But I really like the idea here where, people in the Oasis that spend a lot of time, it mirrors reality to a certain extent. It also means that there's a value, or lack thereof, placed on life where, if you can't defend yourself, don't go into a PvP zone.
Right.
Yeah.
And because that's a high-risk, high-reward situation or areas. And if you're not willing to take the risk, you have the option not to go into the risk.
Right. And for some reason, I want to bring it up just in case anybody who is reading the book and didn't get this, because it was something that, and this comes into play more toward the end of the book. Okay. So we won't give too many spoilers, but I want to mention it just as something to keep in the back of your mind. The way that some of the book reads, I feel like, is when your character dies, you lose level. Does that make sense?
In the book?
Yes.
It seems like it kicks you all the way back to zero. Or at least that's how... I don't remember what chapter said that, but I thought it was pretty nailed down. You die, you start from scratch.
Which is messed up.
Yeah, the impression that I got was he had to, whoever was worthy enough to make it through and gain all the keys had to do it in one shot.
Yeah. How fucked up is that?
Yeah, I mean, he mentions he may have made it too hard for anybody to complete. And if you have like endless possibilities starting over, just like you've already gotten the first 2 keys, well, I'm just on this last, I just gotta get this last part done and I'll have it. And you're starting at that point every time. It's not quite as difficult.
Well, maybe that's the implication too. And you bring up a really interesting point there, John. Maybe it's not that you lose your level, but that you lose your inventory. So, like, if I were to gain a copper key and then I die, I have to go back and regain the copper key.
Right.
Okay.
And you're always going to keep that in your inventory because you never know when you're going to need it.
And there are some games that do that. Like when you die, you drop your inventory, but assuming that somebody doesn't take your crap, if you get on fast enough, you can go to where you dropped it, pick that shit back up.
Well, Ark, Survival Evolved. I don't know if you've played that. That's a perfect example of that kind of thing.
No, but I heard that WoW was similar, if not now, once upon a time.
You instance into a server, you play your game, your character has an inventory. The thing about Ark is when you log out, your character falls in the spot where they're standing, and they stay there until you get back on. So if somebody comes up and sees you just laying there, unless you're in a secure place, they could just hack up your body and take up your entire inventory.
Well, that forces a very real situation of, like if you went to sleep, if you're going to bed, you don't sleep next to a freeway.
But the Oasis doesn't seem to work that way. The way the Oasis seems to work is if you log out, your character just kind of dissipates and goes into the ether and it leaves with you.
I don't remember which chapter it was, but my understanding was that you couldn't just log out, because logging out is a way that people have used as a means of escaping a bad situation. Like if you're overpowered and you just log out and you just disappear, a lot of games prevent that. And I thought they addressed that in this book. Where
he talks about like going to a certain planet and getting stuck there. We had this discussion, like how do you escape that situation if you're stuck and do you just blow yourself up?
Yeah.
So yeah, you can't. Because I think when we were talking about that, we at that point we realized that you couldn't just log out and leave the area.
Yeah, because your character is going to stay around for something like 30 seconds or 60 seconds, and it's going to just be kind of either dumb or fall over, and then you're in the same problem. You're defenseless.
Yeah,
sure. So you're saying there's a latency to the logout procedure, like
otherwise it's used as a situational escape. Yeah,
right. If you were to yank your cord or lag out, just pull your connection, your character would exist there for another 30 seconds or something like that and leave you vulnerable.
Yep.
Or just
I guess that's a good control to put in there.
Right. Yeah, you don't go starting shit and then go, I'm just going to leave.
Yeah.
There is no rage quitting. There's just rage unconsciousness.
That would be the fucking douchebag version of the Oasis, would it not? You would expect every douche in the Oasis to be like, to start some shit, or to be like Leroy Jenkins, go into an instance and then be like, yank, enjoy that, fuckers.
Yeah.
God,
that would be a douche way.
I'd be so pissed off.
And there are games that are like that, like Eve, for example, which is a space RPG of a sort, very open, but it has kill zones, it has PvPs, and it has the PvPs, and you go through a gate, and there might be like 20 assholes sitting on the other side of the gate. And they scramble your engines, and if you just went fuck off and unplugged, it doesn't work like that. They all just shoot your shit and you die.
Yeah.
In fact, I've tried it. Like you log back into the game, and my character's just a little egg floating in space. Where only then am I allowed to scurry home to some other ship I might have.
With your tail between your legs.
Yeah, there was one instance where I jumped through, and there was at least 30 ships there, and they scrambled my warp, and they drained my ship, and I'm just floating there, and I got a text message. They all stopped shooting at me, and they were like, get out of your ship, and we'll let you go. And I texted back, you're pirates. If I get out of my ship, you'll kill me. And they said, no, we do this all the time. We're just going to take your ship. You can go. Oh, okay. They got out of my ship. They let me leave. Assholes
So
about.
they didn't kill you just to do it?
No, they were honorable. They took my ship, and they were going to cash it in for some shit. Yeah.
Honorable.
Honor amongst thieves.
Yeah.
But at any rate, here we are in the Tomb of Horrors, making our way. Low-level Wade Watts finds himself making his way through every trap. It almost seems easy to him because he knows what's to come.
He's like skipping and whistling as he's avoiding
Basically.
traps.
Oh, I don't know if he's doing that.
Goodness me.
He's walking past shit and just throwing up some middle fingers. Now, there was something called like the Gem of Seeing, if I remember it correctly. Is that right?
Yeah.
Now, when I was reading through the module, the way that you earn the Gem of Seeing is through one of the entrances. You fall into a pit of poison spikes, and you will find the Gem of Seeing down there.
Like you do.
Like you do. And I don't know how D&D works, but do you roll to not hit a fucking spike? You do.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
Like, what are the odds? You got to roll to see if maybe you dodged them or landed cleverly or some bullshit like that. Yeah, you
if
totally
you fucking
would.
Bugs Bunny'd your way, like just turned into
You do like a
like
dexterity
a very wavy
roll.
pattern to like fall between them.
The dungeon master's doing last rites. Somebody so this. Good luck with this.
And then you roll super high and you just miss every spike and you can find the Gem of Seeing.
That's
down
it.
there.
Your shit just
So-
lands all fucking curved and whatnot. And
He
miss
just knows
everything.
how to land.
That's an interesting thing, though, because like in order for him to find some of the stuff that he finds, and he mentions some of the stuff that he finds, like he finds some magic items, he finds the Gem of Seeing, a bag of holding, which allows him to carry more stuff. Now, this is something that John and I talked about pretty extensively.
Yeah.
At one point, Wade walks into a treasure room and finds himself just loading up on coins. It riches beyond what he
Gold and silver.
could imagine at that point. And even more money than he's ever seen. And he's just loading his pockets down. But he's got this bag of holding and he says, despite my bag of holding, I can only carry so much. Then I go into my account and convert it to Oasis currency.
Yeah,
Now,
immediately
the thing-
converted
Yeah, immediately
into
converts.
credits. So
So the thing that we're stuck on is once you convert the currency, does it still weigh something?
no.
Because you've converted it to, you've basically deposited it into a bank account, right?
Right.
You're tossing the gold in, and you hear cha-ching, cha-ching. That's the sound of me getting rich.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if that's the case, that you pick all this stuff up, once it's in your inventory, you can deposit it into your Oasis bank account, which is currency that, does or does not exist. Who knows? You would think it doesn't weigh anything anymore. Would you not just stay there and farm the shit out of that area? Or if you could come back in, and we'll get into this later in the chapter, you can always go back through that module. It resets.
Mm-hmm.
Before you beat Acererak or fought Acererak, would you not go back through and farm that fucking treasure trove
Well, at least
over
pick it all
and
up.
over again?
At least pick it all. If it converts immediately from your inventory to Oasis credits, you then
Get it
have
all.
more
You
room
farm
to
the shit
pick
out
up
of
the
it.
rest of it. So the
That
whole
room would be a cement floor by the time I was
right.
done.
Right. The whole
It'd be
idea
clean.
of
I don't care how
I
long it
have
takes.
enough space to pick all this gold and silver
He'd
up.
lick
Well,
the gold dust off the floor.
Fuck it. At
You
this
do.
point, Wade's not sure, or he's pretty sure that we know nobody's up on the scoreboard yet, right? So as far as
Yeah.
Wade knows, nobody's found this yet. Fuck, dude, this is a cash cow.
Yeah.
Go in, play half the module, load up, come back the next day, load up, come back the next day. Shit, after a little while, you're going to be a billionaire.
Well, you'll be a billionaire, and it's experience too, because he says he's gaining experience while he's picking up the coins.
Right.
So it's a gold and experience
Yeah.
line potentially.
Not pointing out a plot hole in the story. Not like this is not our opportunity to go in and bash Ernest Klein. I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Like
It's
it's one
confusing.
thing that I think we kind of caught a snag on, because it was like, okay, well, even if he only runs through it once, I mean, clearly, if this is me playing devil's advocate here, if I had found the avenue to the copper key, right? Money, this is kind of a good way to say that money isn't really the object here. If money was, he could replay this module over and over and keep stacking his pockets. He's really after the fucking copper key.
Yeah.
And anything he finds in between is just icing on the cake. But
Well,
he's after that copper key.
The real money's at
Yeah.
the end.
Right.
But if he's gaining experience, he could have prepped himself a little more for what's to come by leveling up
It's been
before
5
facing
years.
Acererak.
Nobody's found it. Could it wait another week? That'd be my question. Could it wait another week for
Yeah.
me to just do this a few times?
He
To
might
where
have been able to
if I
level up to a
didn't
point where
win,
he could
I'm still
confidently go in.
100,000 there.
Yeah. I mean, he's treading cautiously through the Tomb of Horrors at level 3. Just a week later, you're level 15. You're going to feel a little more confident.
Hell, you'll have enough money and enough skills and capabilities to like buy some shit
Yeah.
to protect you versus the crap that you pick up while you're going through. That would have been my thought.
Yeah.
This may surprise some of you guys listening out there, because, we're on the internet radio, so clearly we're millionaires.
Oh, of course.
But,
Yeah.
but
Picking up gold coins every day, bitches.
yeah, money is still an object to us here. Get to the good part. I mean, you throw a treasure room in front of me and you tell me it respawns, I'm gonna come back a few times before I press on.
Yeah.
Just to be safe. Just to fund the rest of my journey. I mean, think about it. You don't know how much you're going to have to teleport. You don't know how far you're going to have to go. You don't know what means you're going to need to have.
And how many
Now-
times you'd have to go. Like
Right.
Yeah.
You don't know what you need to finish this journey. Now, clearly, Halliday's got this treasure room. I mean, that's in the Tomb of Horrors, but Halliday's stocked it full of coins that could be transferred into Oasis currency, right? So it's like, this is going, like, you get the feeling at this point where it's like, this is going to help you fund your trip.
I mean,
Yeah.
this is real shit. Like, this
Right.
is real credits in the game, and the game's credit system
In the world.
is more
Yeah.
solid than any monetary system in the world. That's
I mean,
stated
he's
in the
earning
book.
fucking real money.
This is a real discovery.
I mean, it's not like you go into, it's not like when you walk into, like, an RPG video game and you walk into a loot catch and you're like, holy shit, this is a really high-end weapon and there's a bunch of coins in here, or caps if you're playing Fallout or whatever. You find a shitload of currency.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like that.
Yeah.
It would be like that if you could say, okay, well, fuck, I just found 10,000 caps. Now I'm going to go to the bank and I'm going to turn it in and I have $10,000 in my fucking bank account. Like, it's the same thing. Imagine that.
I wonder if, again, devil's advocate here, I could see if the idea in mind was I loaded up what was comfortable enough to keep me from being encumbered to get the rest of the way. Because, if I loaded this gargantuous Santa Claus fucking present sack that I'm tossing over my shoulder.
But you immediately transfer it
Yeah,
to
but it's
Oasis currency.
gone.
Well, okay, now it doesn't say it disappears out of the sack. He says that it stays in there. Like, maybe it disappears once you leave the thing, but we don't know.
Okay,
That's a
so
totally different point.
That's okay.
I want to bring it up because, like Chris said, when you play a D&D, you don't get your XP until the end. Maybe you carry that with you until you're done.
It could very well be that while you can
Wade
see your
says,
meters.
I immediately go in and transfer it to Oasis currency.
Well, yes, but it also the currency might be a reflection of the value you have.
Sure.
And
so
if
there
you
might be a
lose
carry rate, is
value,
what you're saying.
it goes away. So you die, that value goes away. Like,
The currency
coin's
was
gone.
automatically converted, and my credit counter jumped to over 20,000.
Now, converted is the operative word there.
Yeah.
Well,
And
and
in
if
addition to
anybody-
the credits, my avatar received an equal number of experience points for obtaining the coins. Happens immediately.
And if anyone who's listening has invested in Ethereum or Bitcoin, we all know that credits can convert down as well as up.
Yeah, but we're not talking about this as like he's not investing here.
Well,
I mean, he's taking dollar for dollar, as it seems, taking that money and putting it into his account and converting it to Oasis currency. So you would think that it would have no weight value at that point.
Yeah.
It's hard to say.
Who
That
knows?
one line makes it very difficult to say, oh, no, it's still physical. Like, you stick it in, and for all I know, the value is, like the value of the shit on you. Not a reflection of it being in a bank account, but like, oh, look, I'm worth something right now. But if I pull the coin out of my sack, which is a very real-world situation, the counter goes down. So think of it like a bank book of the money on your presence in the moment. But
converting
that's not what the line
is
says.
different than a tally.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's hard to argue against because the line's pretty clear. Ka-ching, shit's converted.
Here's the thing. We're going to argue a point that will never be proven.
Well,
there's no way to prove it.
It's an oddity. At the very least, it's a weird, undescribed, unexplained shit.
In the movie, he's going to grab a bunch of gold and silver and then move on.
And his bank account's the number's going to go ding, 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 ding.
Explain that he can't carry anymore. He's just going to say, well, shit, I got a lot of money.
It's going to be like fucking Mario where the coins bounce over his head as he's getting it.
Bling, 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 bling.
Or when he hits the fucking turtle over and over. Do you ever do that? Like when you get to the end of the level and you can like hit the turtle and you just keep getting those extra lives.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like forever. All right. Anyways, $20,000, 20,000 experience points later, Wade finds himself in the central chamber with none other than the unexpected presence of Acererak sitting in a throne looking like a fucking handbag or an alligator or something. Just disgusting. I mean,
you sound like
described in the
Gucci.
book is fucking gross.
Yeah.
So here's Acererak, and as Wade predicted, there's an interaction between the two of them, and Acererak confirms that the only way to the Copper Key is through me, and you have to best me at a challenge. It's a joust game, right?
Mm-hmm.
A game of joust. But it's not a game of joust with horses, but with birds.
With birds.
As Will Wheaton would say. How do we say it?
Birds. Is there an A in that fucking word?
Weird.
Bats. Oh, did you say bads? Bats.
No, I said bats. So, Acererak challenges Wade, much as death does to Bill and Ted in the Bogus Journey, challenges them to a game of skill and or chance. This is a call. Do you think this is a callback to Bill and Ted?
I didn't think
Bogus
about
Journey?
that until now, but yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, you could maybe call it a callback to Seventh Seal.
I've not seen Seven Seal.
Mm-mm.
It's about a guy coming out of the Crusades, making his way home, and death finds him at the very beginning of the movie on the beach and tells him it's time to come home. And the only way that he can escape death is to challenge him to a game of chess. It's super fucking interesting. It's such a good movie. Definitely see Seven Seals. One of the greatest movies ever made.
In comparison to Bill and Ted's, it kind of reminds me of a lot of stories where you're challenged. One of the players is challenged or a character's challenged, but what it's really designed to do is highlight the skills of the character in contrast to something that should be better. So I thought of this when I read this was kind of like the Devil Goes Down to Georgia. You know, he plays his fucking violin. And the devil plays a violin. And, you know, he has to be better than the devil in order to win the golden violin. And here, he's like, you don't have to kick my ass. You've just got to do something you're already really fucking good at and beat me, who should be better.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the same idea,
Yeah,
whether it's chess or the fiddle.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Yeah, it's the same kind of theme.
Yeah.
I was just using a different example I could relate to.
Right.
I was thinking of the same thing, actually.
You were thinking of Devil Went
I
Down
was
to
thinking
Georgia.
of Devil Went Down to Georgia. Yeah.
And he's like
I
playing
didn't, and I
Joust.
didn't want to say anything, but you said it. So.
You can bet that when this comes out in the movie, I'm gonna cut scene the shit out of this part and use the Devil Goes Down to Georgia music on top of it as a montage.
So look forward to that, folks.
Yeah. It might be part of the soundtrack.
Yeah. So, anyways, lucky for Wade, he has played Joust before. Not only has he played Joust, he's played it competitively against H. It's been a little while, about a year since he's played it, but he's pretty confident he can knock the rust off. Now, as he does, he loses the first game, but in the second game, he begins to anticipate the movements of Acererak. And he does this by saying that AI, or a computer opponent, has sort of a predetermined set of movements. And if you can kind of trick the computer, you can gain an advantage. And at this point, he brings up a line that I brought up on Reddit, went back and forth with some people. Very interesting line where he says that would be an axiom in video game, or that was an axiom in video games, or would be until AI was invented, or true AI was invented. So interesting thing to say. Now, clearly, since this book is written, on a narrative thread from Wade, it's written from the future looking back on the contest, right? So you can parse out and separate the whole past tense there, that until true AI was invented, right? So it's not saying that at this point in the book it was invented, but it's saying it might have been by the time that Wade was narrating the book. We don't really know. Until
you had read the quote, I was really kind of along the lines that this was that future perfect tense, where he's referencing the past in the place of the future. Like I will have eaten dinner tomorrow night. But when you read it, it definitely kind of came off like he was talking about, AI was invented, but speaking of, where I am now versus where I was then, that sort of thing.
It's worded in such a way that could be...
I can see why you stopped on this one. I really can.
Yeah. I mean,
and I like it.
Okay, so there's an opportunity to parse something out here. So for me, it works in two ways. In one way, everybody's familiar with simulation theory. If you're listening to this podcast, you're familiar with simulation theory. It's what Elon Musk espouses about, that reality is a simulation, right?
It's the 101 psychology of brain in the jar. How would you know when all of your senses are feeding into basically an office? Where
so inherently, if reality is a simulation, there is a creator, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I'll bite.
We could be looking at a technically parallel universe, because if there are pure simulated beings that are true AI, they're capable of thought and feeling within the Oasis, we've technically created a parallel world to our own.
Yeah, almost.
But it's a parallel world that we can inhabit.
It's like an overlaying dimension where we can invade that dimension, but they can't invade ours.
Exactly, and
right.
they can only conceive ours. Like we can describe it to them, but. And maybe they can wrap their heads around it. Who knows? I mean, maybe they can't. Maybe because it's so outside of their realm of thought that they can't. Who knows? If it's true AI, it's hard.
It's the Matrix.
It's hard to parse.
Actually, the Matrix is exactly what that is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's an interesting point to think that maybe that's where Ready Player One is heading.
I hope so.
If it becomes a trilogy, maybe Wade becomes, connected with the Oasis in a different way than we see right now. I think that would be an interesting arc on the book. Seeing what they did with the other Matrix movies, it terrifies the shit out of me.
Well, and
because the first Matrix movie was great, The other two were fucking terrible.
Yeah.
As limited as our technology is right now, there are people who have attempted to sort of imprint or record their mind's activities. And I don't mean just journaling, but I mean the idea of putting themselves into, it's that ghost in the machine idea.
Right. That's sort of the other option here. Okay? Is that reality being a simulation, that's an arc for the story. Two, if at this point in the story, that was sort of Halliday's legacy, right? That he left behind a blueprint for true AI. In addition to $240 billion in control of GSS, he's also giving you the blueprint for how he exists within the Oasis. So maybe Wade is the one that takes that and says, GSS is now going to develop true AI.
You know, the funny point there is that in Chapter 1, he's like, well, can't take it with you, can you?
Right.
And my thinking is that if he really created true AI, at this point, you would have seen it in the unpredictability of the AI that he says he created in Acererak.
But that's an interesting point, too, because if you can't take your consciousness with you, it doesn't mean that you can't leave it.
Mm-hmm.
I can see a story branching off, and I would really love to hear how that might be done, because that's that place where technology might branch off.
Okay. Life is a series of choices, right? I mean, like, if you play adventure games or if you're a fucking human being, life is a series of choices.
Sure.
So, if you leave your consciousness behind to be inhabited by an AI, a true AI, that is capable of thought, that is capable of emotion, that is capable of interacting with people in a very natural way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, who's to say that the decisions that AI would make would be the same as yours? And again, that brings up parallel universe theory, where the arc of, one universe is completely separate from another.
Okay.
Now, that's not too separate from what we understand of parallel universes, what we theorize as a parallel universe, that it could be just a different trajectory based on one decision, right? Now,
Sure.
That's consistent with what we're talking about here. If Halliday leaves his consciousness in the Oasis as a true AI, whatever decision he makes arcs off into a separate parallel universe to our own. It's not inconsistent with the theory of a parallel universe.
Sure.
I'm going off the deep end here.
No. Okay, I could see that, but then if I was in his shoes and I was to create the most advanced AI, the edge of AI, and I'm the first inhabitant of that AI,
You'd
right?
be making porn. We all know.
Yeah.
Well, okay, but aside from that,
My second thing would be
I would ensure that my wealth and power would transfer to my character in game. Why would I need to find somebody else to take over when I would do it myself?
Because you're God.
Well, yeah. So why would I? I'm
You
sorry. Why
wrote
would I do
yourself
that?
into the code. You're God. I mean, like, there's nothing you would ever want.
Well, maybe there's some things that are outside of the Oasis that somebody would need to have control over.
Or maybe you would want to hide.
Which is why you would find somebody like Wade to control it.
Right.
Sure, I
To
can
make
see
sure that you exist consistently within the Oasis.
You know, the way that a god can escape goddom is being killed. Now, if that god isn't killed, that means that he can now exist with a greater degree of power through the freedom of now anonymity. That, if you believe that he's not in the Oasis anymore, he's free to do more. And I want to harken back to Westworld, which you need to see. But there's a similar... I just thought about this days ago when we were talking about Westworld. The thought crossed my mind in that exact same way, which is if you can fake your own death, and putting yourself into AI is a great way to kind of fake your own death, then you can still exist as God without being known. now you have more power through that freedom.
Exactly, and we'll see that played out a little bit in future chapters.
Right.
About how you can exist within that realm, being unseen,
Right.
and still all powerful.
Right.
But one way or another, we know where Wade is. He's playing Joust against Acererak, and at the end of the day, after a sweaty fucking battle, he defeats the Demi-Lich and is awarded the Copper Key. And after he does this, he's greeted by Halliday himself. Or, I should say,
Acererak morphs.
Acererak.
Yeah, Acererak morphs into Anorak, which we know from previous chapters is basically Halliday's identity in any fantasy game he's ever engaged in. It's a wizard with black flowing robes. Gives him basically what could be amounted to as a motivational speech here, right?
He turns into Tim Robbins.
Yeah.
Life is about pain and
Tony
pleasure.
Robbins.
Tony Robbins, my bad.
But no, I mean, yeah, I mean, he basically comes out and you know, I mean, gives any quest giver speech where basically says, more to come, you're doing a good job, you're on the right track.
It's more of a narration.
Attaboy.
You know? Like there's no interaction between the two.
Right. And this is something that people brought up on Reddit. I mean, as proof against the AI theory, or true AI theory, is that this seemed like a pre-recorded message.
Yeah.
Thanks. You've reached Acererak
Sorry,
/
Wade, but
Halliday.
your princess is in another castle.
Thanks for playing the game. Please leave a message at the tone.
Yeah. But whatever it means, or, you know, I mean, Halliday gives him a little bit of a pep talk. Anorak gives him a little bit of a pep talk. And he's on his way. Halliday also gives him... Is it printed on the key, or does Halliday just, like, speak it to him? The next clue.
Yeah, it's written on the key.
Yeah, written on the key is the next clue. To push Wade farther into his journey. And, John, will you read exactly what it says?
What you seek lies hidden in the trash on the deepest level of Daggorath.
So immediately Wade knows what the fuck that means, right?
Yeah. He's not confused by that line.
It's really interesting too, because like out of context, right? I mean, even Wade says like this can mean a couple different things.
Yeah.
You know, like Daggorath is you know, something in Elvish that J.R. Tolkien wrote. But there was also and this will piss anybody off who hates the references part of this book, an incredibly obscure reference to a 1982 video game made only for the TRS-80.
Right.
I mean, again, just reaching into that fucking bag of tricks there. I mean, for anybody who does not like the references, that has got to be an itchy line.
It is a bit like saying, I'm incredibly awesome for knowing that.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
It's like saying...
Even for those seasoned gamers out there, here's a little bit of trivia for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the marriage... This is why nerds and hipsters get along so well.
Oh, yeah? Well, do you know this obsure
like
bit of
this.
knowledge I've got hidden?
This is why I'm the author and you're the reader.
All right. Well, so Wade is on his way to Middletown, Halliday's place of birth, to find the deepest dungeons of Daggorath hidden in the trash. That's a TRS-80. We kind of prefaced that here already.
Yeah.
We know where Wade's going. He's going to Halliday's boyhood home. What happens next, we don't know. But as he's walking out of the Tomb of Horrors, he sees somebody approaching. A shadow of somebody at first, and then confirms that there is another avatar here in the Tomb of Horrors with him. Wade thought he was the first. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. We don't know now because there's another avatar here. Shit just got fucked up. Stuff got real. Stuff got unpredictable. We don't know what's going to happen. Chapter 9 lies ahead. We'll find out a little bit more. This is and has been Get to the Good Part. I am Ryan.
I'm John.
And this is Chris.
We'll see you next time. So long, Gunters. it is what it is. You know, I mean, please fucking take that out. I can't believe I just said that.
It is what it is.
Don't take that out.
Not proud of that.
Oh, it's all right. Just get her done.
You just get
her done. What it was that he
just
went into
Jesus
the chamber
take the wheel.
and he got good.
A thirst for revenge sends one man on a deadly journey through the galaxy in the adrenaline-pumping new novel, Galactic Satori Chronicles. Written by Nick Breaker and Paul E. Hicks, this raucous sci-fi adventure introduces Asher, a young man whose world is turned upside down when he discovers that his fiance's death has been directly caused by an imminent alien invasion. In a desire to better understand humans in order to destroy them, these aliens are projecting their consciousness onto unsuspecting men and women, and in the process are learning exactly how to use humanity's own selfishness and greed as weapons against them. Fueled by emotions that the aliens will never understand, Asher bands together with a group of friends. These 4 MIT co-eds are more than meets the eye and go to battle with those who are intent on destroying our planet. Asher takes the fight from Earth to an alien spaceship and back again. A fight that will either save the planet or doom it. The first installment in an upcoming series, Galactic Satori Chronicles, is an engrossing look at the manipulation of time, mental projection, futuristic technology, and of course, aliens. By Nick Breaker and Paul E. Hicks. Pick up Galactic Satori Chronicles now on Amazon. Link in the show notes.